Welcome to Primal Girl Wellness and Down to Astrology. This is Miss Jenny and I am your astrologer. And today's video is about liars. So everybody lies. Everybody lies. Typically about little things and often because they're trying to avoid getting into trouble or upsetting someone or hurting feelings. No, that dress does not make your big behind look big at all. Why, yes, your singing voice is lovely. No, the writing was awesome. I really enjoyed reading that story. So people lie tastes great, tastes great. People lie all the time, and usually about small things, but it becomes a problem when it is constant and or done in a way that is specifically to benefit them, and there's absolutely no integrity in their words anymore. So there's that. So George Santos has become the poster child for everything that's wrong with Congress and specifically the GOP party. Oh, George. And he's quite the character, but there's something off about him. There's something very off-putting about I can see it, but I can't put my finger on it, or I couldn't for a long time. So I looked up his chart, and I've got the correct birth date this time. Thank you, dear viewer, who gave me that information. And I'm looking to see if I can find any signature or indication with planetary aspect that would signal, like even asteroids, that would signal, the pathological compulsive lying that seems to be him. That is his entire identity, is this pathological lying. So the interesting thing was that I couldn't find it. Now, what I would say, first of all, you got to know, like when we talk about symbolism in astrology and we talk about liars, right, and deceit, we go to mythology and the gods that the planets are named after for those interpretations. So the god in mythology that is responsible for being the patron god of liars and thieves and cheats is Mercury, who is also known, I believe, in Greek or Roman. I can never keep those two straight. His other name is Hermes. But Hermes and or Mercury, which is the god the planet Mercury is named after, is the god, the patron saint of liars and thieves and tricksters. So when we're looking for, a person's relationship to the truth, we would often look for Mercury first, and then Saturn next, Saturn and Jupiter. And the reason is Saturn doesn't lie. Saturn is very reality and fact-based. Saturn is very rigid and very strict about these things. And Saturn's just a pain in the neck, right? So the Saturn person is not the person you go to when you want a comforting lie. Do you like my new hairstyle? Saturn will tell you the truth more often than not. If they can't avoid answering the question at all, they will tell you the truth. You don't want that. Not if it's, the truth you don't want to hear. Jupiter, on the other hand, is very generous with their embellishments. So Mercury is the planet and god that is the patron saint of liars, and where we look for, lying. But Jupiter and Saturn will certainly color that, and so will the rest of the chart. So it's not so simple to just go at a chart and pull a couple of aspects and planets and say, aha, you're a liar. It's not. If only were that simple. If only were that simple. So what can it tell us about the potential for lying? And what about this George Santos character who apparently lies like he breathes, constant, regular, and without thinking? Whew, wow. So to give you some examples of how this might work in a chart, we're going to go back to Trump, who we know is a habitual liar. There's apparently two categories of lying. Well, three. There's the casual lie, which we all do every day to make life run a little more smoothly. Then there are the problematic liars, which are habitual and pathological. A habitual liar, they lie, but mostly often apparently to, protect themselves from, ugly realities or to get out and taking responsibility for things. So a habitual liar is a reflexive liar. They lie as a reflex or in reaction to something, usually to cover their own behinds. Trump is a habitual liar. He has Mercury squaring Neptune in his chart. Now, some people would say, oh, that's Neptune. Of course he's a liar. But that's not true, because Mercury and Neptune in positive or negative aspect will often give you somebody who is capable of being very artistic. And Lord knows that man was very artistic with his ability to sway people by their unconscious biases. Artists, musicians, and poets are typically what we like to see with Mercury and Neptune. Sometimes you'll get people who are a little, like literally delusional, living on a little fantasy island in their head. Or you might get people with drug problems with Mercury and Neptune. But certainly habitual lying would come under that too, because Neptune likes things soft, right? Neptune doesn't like hard, cold, ugly reality or truth or fact, and will often soften the edges of things to make it nicer, right? And Neptune is not good with taking responsibility for things. I mean, they'll do it, but they're not going to jump to the chance. And they're very uncomfortable with that kind of burden, which is what they see it as. Taking accountability for them is seeing it as a bit of a burden. So you have to be very gentle when you make them take responsibility for something. And Trump, with his chart, was a natural car salesman. So the thing about it is, had Trump been born in any other station in his life, he could have been born literally in a trailer park so poor that everybody in the family had to wear the same pair of shoes, just passing them down the line until there was nothing left but, maybe some gumshoe leather and a lace, right? But even if that were the case, he would have still had this innate ability, this extraordinary ability to embellish and blow up huge and big and much more glamorous the things than they actually are. So he would have always presented himself as larger than life. He would have always manicured and softened the edges of reality and facts to suit his comfort level, right? And he would have always been able to glamorize and really play on people's, unconscious needs and desires to kind of get them to do what he wants them to do, right? Because with his chart, he's got Mercury and Neptune coming to 11 to the second. Fraud is a big thing in that chart with that Sun-Moon opposition in Gemini Sag for him as a combination. And again, everything in astrology is combination. So if you see somebody with a Mercury and Neptune square, do not assume that they're habitual liars. And, certainly if they've got a Sun-Moon opposition, it's combinations, right? It's like the difference between making shortbread cookies and biscuits. You can have the same ingredients for all of this stuff, but, a couple little changes here and there, you got a completely different thing coming out of the oven. So that leads us to George Santos, who is proving himself to be a magnificent pathological liar, of epic proportions, and shamelessly so. So, that's pretty interesting. What is going on with this guy and where is this coming from? So, of course, I went to his chart, his correct chart, by the way. Thank you for the correction, dear viewer. And I'm looking for hard Neptune aspects. I'm looking for hard Mercury aspects because, it goes without saying, it's a natural conclusion or trajectory that we're following. That's a natural logic that we're following, that, Mercury and Neptune should be strong if we're dealing with somebody who's lying, especially somebody who's pathologically lying, right? I'm not seeing it. It's not nearly as obvious and clear and clean cut as I would want it to be. And then it reminded me, then I remembered, right? Here's some important things, because an astrology chart will not show us character. An astrology chart will show a lot of things, but at the end of the day, nature versus nurture. Your astrology chart is the nature of what's predetermined for you. This is who you are in essence. There's no getting away from it. Nurture is what and who you become as a result of your upbringing and your life experiences and your circumstances. It's how you respond to your environment in the time period that you were born into. Nature, nurture. So everybody lies, but becoming a pathological liar, that's a whole other set of circumstances creating them. So you're not going to find signatures for pathological lying in a chart. It's not going to happen. And certainly we could say Pluto would make it compulsive liars, and Neptune is going to make them lie, just liars in general, because they've got such a loose relationship with reality. Such a preference for living in fantasy island. We could say all of those things. Jupiter likes to expand and embellish, right? But at the end of the day, that's not going to give us a signature that we can point to a chart and say, they're going to be a pathological liar. And the reason, my friends, is this. When we talk about pathological lying, What we're really talking about is a form of sociopathy, right? So a sociopath is known, it's a signature of sociopaths that they are pathological liars, right? And just to drive home what I'm talking about, let me read to you a little piece about what pathological lying and sociopaths look like. Sociopaths are likely to create fake credentials in the business world. Don't be surprised if you find out your sociopath boss never even went to college, let alone graduate from Harvard. They're also likely to lie about previous relationships to their current victims, or people they're lying to. Teen sociopaths are highly likely to lie about situational circumstances with their parents and or siblings or other family members if it will gain them sympathy. They will lie about physical or mental abuse if it helps them in a divorce or custody situation. They will certainly lie about recovery or reform to counselors if it will help them get out of prison. The list goes on, but the end game for the sociopath remains the same. A sociopath is a pathological liar, and there isn't anything you can do to stop them. And it is estimated that 1 out of every 25 people in the United States is a sociopath. Some things that they also do apparently is lie about how their parents die. Oh my God. So here, sociopaths are pathological liars. Pathological liars lie to gain something. Their lying is usually quite calculated and manipulative, and the end result is typically pain. A sociopath who doesn't care who their lies affect, or a sociopath doesn't care who their lies affect as long as it fits what the sociopath hopes to achieve. Unlike compulsive liars, pathological liars can help themselves. They know the difference between right and wrong, and they're well aware that lying is wrong. Unfortunately, they simply don't care. In fact, sociopaths are so good at lying, they can become their own lie. Think about that. If a sociopath can stage his own lie and live in his own fantasy, gaining trust is a breeze. Trust then becomes the foundation of carefully orchestrated manipulation schemes. So, would Trump be considered a compulsive or pathological liar? Sure, absolutely. But it's not going to show in the chart. Is Santos a compulsive or pathological liar? Everything we're seeing so far says yes, absolutely, without a doubt. Classic textbook case. But is he a sociopath? Well, here's the thing. We don't know that because we're not mental health professionals that can make the kind of diagnosis. But based on what we're seeing and what we understand about how sociopaths and lying, or their relationship to truth, works, it's a pretty good bet. There's some bad wiring in that brain of his. So, will you find pathological liars, compulsive liars, their signatures in an astrology chart? Yes and no. Yes and no. What you will instead find is the style with which they lie. Right? And, like, will a frog jump to A or B if given stimulus C, kind of thing. Like, this is the kind of stuff we can determine with a chart. Mercury is it's the mythological god, patron saint of liars and thieves and tricksters. So Mercury and Mercury's placements will always give you the information you're looking for in terms of people's propensity to tell the truth or embellish the truth, as it were. As Kellyanne Conway, the zombie, likes to say, alternate facts. So we're going to dive into George Santos's chart really deeply. I cannot say that he is a sociopath, but I can tell you there's something really, really off about that character. And I don't just mean because he's a pathological liar. I mean because he's a pathological liar, and there's a whole lot of other stuff that's just not right. That's just not right. So keep an eye on that space and see if we don't start getting some mental health diagnosis from somebody out there in the community that's observing him as well, that confirms that we are in fact dealing with a class A sociopath. Oof, right? Now, here's the thing. Before we throw him under the bus, where he belongs, I want you guys also to consider this. Do you realize that almost every member of Congress, at least the ones that I can find information for, there's a lot of them, but they all have strongly placed Mercuries? And the worst of the lot, for instance, the Matt Gaetzes in Congress and a couple of other ones, if you look at their chart, they have very prominent, very powerful, dynamic Mercuries in their chart. And we see how closely related to the truth they are. So, Mercury and Congress seems to have a lot in common as well, or Mercury and politicians, I should say. All right, so I thought I'd share that with you. Again, astrology will not show you character. Character is something that is a result of how you're raised and the environment you find yourself in and your response to the experiences you deal with in this lifetime. Astrology cannot tell you how you will develop in response to those things. So sociopathy, which is a mental disease, right, or a personality disorder, a personality disorder, sociopathy and psychopathy, anything that has to do with mental illness, you're not going to be able to identify by looking at a chart. If we could do that, like, oh my God, wouldn't that be nice? It'd be so simple. We could identify diseases, and it doesn't work like that. So try not to get hung up in this fantasy that some of the amateur astrologers and the lay astrologers and the ones who are trying to make money off of you, would have you believe that you can look at a chart and identify a psychotic. No, you can't do that. Those are character issues, and those are things that have to do with nurture versus nature. So when it comes to George Santos, watch this space. It will be interesting to see how this all plays out, because if he is, in fact, and I'm not saying he is, I'm not a therapist, but if he is, in fact, a classic textbook, grade A sociopath, he is going to cause more damage, or potentially more damage, in much, much more cruel ways than Trump would ever have been capable of. So, we'll see.